live on Facebook. Here we are. Hi. This is episode 84 of Coffee with a Pastor, and today's coffee with a guest pastor, Reverend Dr. Courtney Pace. And I'm going to pull up my Facebook on my phone so I can see who's signing on and say hello. Can you see that it's popped up?
Yes, I do see it now.
Okay, so let's see. Right now it's just us, and now I see a couple people popping on. But it's not showing me on my phone, so I can see who's signing on. Did it work? Were you able to mute it?
Yes.
Okay, it says we have a few people watching. I love it when Facebook won't tell me though who they are, because then I can't say hello. So that's always fun. Why Facebook? Say hello if you're watching so that we can say hello to you, because Facebook is not sharing with me. Hi, Sarah. While you all are signing on, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest, because we don't have a ton of time, but we have the perfect amount of time. This is Courtney Pace. Courtney and I have known each other for several years. We have lots of different connections. But let me just share with you a little bit of her bio. She is the Prathia Hall Scholar in Residence of Social Justice History for Equity for Women in the Church. No, for Equity for Women in the Church. That's an awesome organization. She has a PhD in religion from Baylor University, an MDiv in theology from Truett Seminary. That's kind of how we know each other, and an honors Bachelor of Science in Computer Science Engineering with minors in mathematics and psychology from UT. That's pretty badass. Let's just pause and say that's badass. She researches social justice movements in American religion, particularly race and gender. She's the author of Freedom Faith, The Womanist Vision of Prathia Hall, and numerous peer-reviewed articles, book chapters, book reviews, encyclopedia articles. She's an ordained Baptist minister, the proud mom of Stanley and Saren. Saren, did I say that right? Saren, gotcha. Thank you. And she's also the creator of the Stoll Sisters podcast, which features women preachers of all Christian traditions. And that's her bio, but she didn't even include everything. Her and I know each other because we're both on the board for Nevertheless She Preached conference. And of course, we're featuring board members and founders over the next month as we get energy going with registration. And Courtney and I are also both fellows for the Baptist Joint Committee of Religious Liberty, which is how we've spent more time together in recent years. And so she's doing a lot. And also, can you tell us where you work now?
I'm currently the Associate Vice President of Talent for FedEx Employees Credit Association, which is nationally headquartered here in Memphis, Tennessee.
Thank you. So really, really, really awesome, brilliant, smart as a whip person that we got with us today. I'm so excited for you to hear from her as she talks about raising socially conscious kids, especially during these specific times we're in now. I want to say hi to Clark, Dina, Tiffany, Brittany, Tori, Matthew, lots of people watching. I'm going to go ahead and just get off of here so that you can get going, because I want to hear as much as possible from you. But thank you so much for joining us this morning in the middle of a lot going on.
No, I'm thrilled to be here. So I have two kids. For most of my parenting life, I've had one. I have a son named Stanley, who is 9 years old. And I just had a daughter this year, Saren, who is about to be 4 months old later this week. Because of my research, I'm always talking about race and gender. Holidays are impossible for me because you're not supposed to talk about religion or politics. That's all I ever think about, read about, reflect about. So I'm really terrible at holiday tables because of that. But of course, it was going to influence my parenting, because my son sees me reading books. He sees the kinds of work that I do. He knows about conferences where I'm speaking. He's attended when I preach. So he's used to hearing me talk about race and gender as naturally as we talk about how was your day, as naturally as we talk about what sport do you want to sign up for this season. It's just part of our household. It's part of our ongoing dialogue. And one of the best ways that I've found to engage kids at a young age is through stories. So kids love stories. They love reading books. It's the best way to stall for bedtime is to have extra books read to them. So we made sure that his library was very inclusive of all kinds of people. So we're as likely to read a book about Rosa Parks as we are Jackie Robinson, as we are he has a book about Harriet Tubman he really likes. Jazz Jennings wrote a book about her experience as a transgender child and how that shaped her, how people responded, how her family came on board. There are also some great allegories, like Lulu is a rhinoceros, which is about a dog that's convinced it's a rhinoceros and how Lulu had to sort of make her own way in the world in that. We read books about not just race and gender, but also economic disparity. So we talk a lot about how our communities are built by people who have resources to make sure they keep having resources, and that the system is not necessarily fair for everybody. Another thing that we've done to try to make sure that he has a wide variety of experiences as a child is we don't isolate ourselves in white communities. So we are members of the Jewish Community Center here in Memphis, where we've been a part since 2015. And that is actually one of the most diverse organizations I've ever been a part of. There are a lot of interracial families, interfaith families. You don't have to be Jewish to belong there. They have been incredibly hospitable, and even with just the Jewish community that's there, there's a lot of variety in how people practice Judaism, but they're so committed to working together and staying together. So for instance, at the water park that they have open in the summer, you're just as likely to see someone in, the most skimpy swimwear as you are someone in a full, ankle to collarbone type of swimming outfit. And everybody is just a community. There's not judgment, there's not division, they just get along. And so it was really important to me to expose my son to that and to become part of that kind of a community. He also knows about the kinds of work that our church does. So I'm a member of First Baptist Memphis. And one of the things that I love about that community is they are in Midtown Memphis, and we don't do a lot of international missions. We do some, but most of our mission work is local, and it's tied to the ways that people in our church are connected to the community organically. It's not where we go to some other neighborhood, do something, and then come back to where we live. It's very integrated. People that we're just as likely to have events in our building as we are to have them outside of the building. And to me, that was really important, to have an anti-colonialist view of mission, and to have my son be aware of those different ways of practicing Christian love and hospitality as part of his consciousness and upbringing. I also love how our church talks to kids like they're smart. So some churches really push things down to kids where it almost has no substance by the time the kids hear it. They don't think kids are capable of understanding theological concepts or deep ethical questions. But I find kids not only are ready, but they're already wondering about those things on their own. They want us to help guide them in how to consider those subjects. And so I really appreciate that our children's ministry will talk openly and candidly with our children, with our youth, and let them help shape the conversation as well. Some people have been surprised by how honest we are with Stanley, but as a parent, I want to have open, honest dialogue with him. Certainly everything is age appropriate. I don't want to do or say anything that's going to cause additional concern for him, but I don't want to sugarcoat his world to where he doesn't realize what the world is like until he's a teenager. When I worked at Baylor, I saw a lot of freshmen whose parents had sheltered them from reality, and then when they got to college, they learned about the depth of suffering, inequity, and injustice in the world for the first time. They were not prepared for it, and it was incredibly disillusioning to feel like their parents had not shared with them about what was happening. So it's always been important to me to talk to him if there's a war going on. We're talking about the different sides and why they're having conflict and why they have chosen to go to war instead of more diplomatic solutions. If there's an incident of police brutality, which is just about every day. So in cell phones, we know about it more, but it's been happening at this frequency all along. It's just white people have sheltered themselves from it. So now that that is less possible, I want to be sure my son realizes the trajectory is not that we had the civil rights movement and then everything was better and now it got bad again. The civil rights movement made a lot of progress for racial justice, but it's not over. There is still a significant amount of racial inequity. Our system is still built by white people to benefit white people, by wealthy people to benefit wealthy people. It still disadvantages those who aren't considered normative. And so as we're talking about solutions and what people have done to try to make things better, I think kids are capable of understanding those dynamics. The way I would explain it to a 6 or 7-year-old will be different than how I would explain it to a college freshman. But they understand systems, they understand communities and people not sharing and people not asking questions. I mean, they understand that because those are the same dynamics they have at school. So it's always been important to me to be very honest with him and share candid conversations. So since the COVID virus has invaded the world, there have been a lot of opportunities to expand that dialogue. You know, he wanted to know, was everybody safe? Was everybody staying home? He even asked, does everybody have access to the internet so they can Zoom with their friends and family? And we talked about wealth inequity, technology access inequity. We talked about some people have essential jobs and have to go into work. They've not been home at all through this. We've talked about people whose jobs require them to travel and how dangerous that is, how hard it is to access certain kinds of protective gear. So anyway, so we've been able to have those conversations. And then with the intense media coverage of the lynching of George Floyd, we have continued our conversations about Black Lives Matter. That's something that's been at the forefront of our family dialogue for a long time. We have Black Lives Matter logos up all over our home. We talk frequently about why it's important to say that. So I was just in a conversation with a family member recently who was trying to defend all lives matter. And I just explained to her, this was someone in her 60s, of course all lives matter, but we say Black Lives Matter because lumping everybody together as all erases the fact that our society acts like Black lives don't matter. Our society acts like trans lives don't matter. So it's important to state that explicitly because the system is set up against people who don't have that connection to power. We say Black Lives Matter because Black lives are treated as disposable, which is unacceptable. It's unethical. There should be no room for that in a democratic society or a Christian household. And kids are absolutely capable of having those kinds of conversations. And we talk about how complicated it is, how police are tired, overworked, underpaid, how they have to make decisions very quickly. I mean, we talk through all of that, but we also talk about people who are police officers have chosen that career versus you're born a race. It's not something that you choose. You're born trans. It's not something that you choose. And we talk about how when we're afraid, we go back to those base instincts. And if our decisions when we're afraid are more biased, that reveals that all along we have been biased, even if we thought that we were beyond that. So my recommendation for how to raise socially conscious kids is to just talk to them. See what questions they have, answer them as best you can. If there's something they ask that you don't know how to answer, just say, you know, I think about that a lot too. Or say, I'm not sure. Here's what I understand. Here's the stuff that still doesn't make sense to me. Or you can even respond to them in questions. Well, what do you think? What stories from the Bible feel kind of like this that might help us understand it better? Or if there's my son thinks a lot through music. It's how he emotes. And so we'll will be listening to a song, and I can tell it's resonating with him because he'll say, Mom, what about this thing? Or why didn't they try this? And so those conversations in the car are some of the best dialogues that we have. You have their undivided attention, and you're able to just sort of hear their uninterrupted stream of consciousness and respond to that. Right now, kids are getting ready to go back to school or they're beginning homeschool. I think there are a lot of elements of privilege in that, right? Not every household can afford for one parent to stay home. My household certainly can't. So our son is in public school. And if public schools are not safe enough for all of our children, then all of us should be concerned, even those of us with access to resources to keep our kids out of public schools. And and some people are doing little pods where a group of families will homeschool together, and that helps the parents juggle work and that kind of thing. That's good, but again, there's a lot of privilege in having a community where that's possible. There are many school districts where there aren't families that can juggle that, or even if they have adults who are home during the day, there may not be access to technology, or there might be other responsibilities they're doing from home. And even parents who are able to work from home are working. They don't have the bandwidth to be able to educate their children while doing their full-time jobs. And so there are laws, as someone who's working in HR, there are laws that try to create flexibility where possible, but parents are making some really hard decisions right now. And one of the ways that we talked with our son about how we decided for him to go back to school is we just laid it all out there. We said, these are the choices that your school has given us. These are the kinds of things that we're worried about as we think. And he joined the conversation. He wanted to ask some questions and, well, what about my friend here? And what will this look like? And I mean, we just talked about it. My husband is a preschool teacher. My son's father is a high school teacher. So this was very near and dear to him. What is school going to look like? And so we just talked about it. And everyone in our family has a different way school looks right now. But again, kids just want to know they can come to you. And so being able to talk to them openly and honestly when they're young keeps that door open. So when he's older, as he's facing other things that most kids don't talk to their parents about, he knows he can talk to us about anything. There's no topic that's going to scare us. And I think that's what kids need. They need an adult they can go to about what their concerns are. And they don't need us to have it all together or be perfect all the time. They need us to be available and present. And sometimes the best thing I can do is say, I'm sad about that too. I don't know what to do about that either. But at least then we're in that moment together. If you're wondering how to talk to your kids about really difficult ethical problems in our world, you don't have to have the answers. You have to have a genuine heart and a willingness to be in conversation. But it'll be a lot easier than you think.
Thank you so much for sharing a huge topic in a really short amount of time. I know that this is just the beginning of a lot of people thinking about it more deeply. And I know that you also don't have all the time in the world and have other obligations. So I want to stay true to that. But I just want to say it sounds like what you're saying is, in a nutshell, make the space, create the space in your life for honest conversations. And I know that that can sound kind of vague for people who like checklist steps for things, but for further reading, you can check Dr. Pace's article, which I posted in the comments, about how to talk to your children about things that matter. And I think you could read more about it, and maybe we can chat more again another time. But it was so helpful just to be reminded. A lot of us have younger kids, that it's never too late to begin those conversations and to trust that our kids are capable of having them in their own way. So just thank you so much for talking about this. A lot of us needed to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. Kids are great at asking questions, and often they'll ask and answer their own questions if you give them the space to do that. So I think of it as a ministry of presence. I can be present with him in this wondering. And isn't that what faith is?
Right.
Is being present with God in the midst of great wondering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a good faith walk and a good advice for people in their faith journey is that it doesn't necessarily include a set of answers. So,
That's right.
it's the same kind of work, and we just have to let go of that blueprint that we think we need that has all the details written out for us.
Security is an illusion.
Yeah.
You expect it until it's been ripped out from under you. The truth is you never had it. You had an illusion of security. For some people, in fact for most people around the world, there is no guarantee of security. There has never even been an illusion of a guarantee of security. So what's happened in our country in the last 4 years in terms of our relationship with the rest of the world, and now this global health crisis, has helped Americans understand the way many other people have always lived.
Right. Yeah.
With an unstable government, with civil unrest, with lack of access to necessary care. And it's hard to tell your kids that you can't promise to keep them safe.
Mm-hmm.
But we can promise to be with them whatever happens. We can promise to tell them the truth. And sometimes when he asks me questions that I don't know, I say, what if we pray that God would help us understand? And sometimes I don't even know how to phrase that. Sometimes he'll step in and do it, or sometimes we'll draw about it. Maybe we could draw how we feel about this. There's so many ways that kids are very comfortable expressing their concern, where you can offer a loving, protective response as a parent, but also an honest response that invites them into a greater understanding of citizenship and their own social responsibilities.
Oh, so good. You're just being a pastor to me now. So thank you. I know that others feel the same. And again, I hate to rush you off because I know this is a lot, but I know you have another commitment coming up. So I'm going to say goodbye to our Facebook friends, and I'll say goodbye to you after that. But goodbye, Facebook friends. We'll see you tomorrow for our usual Coffee with the Pastor with Fran. And thanks again for joining us this morning.